You do know, I'm kidding.
This gets fuzzier every month.
Recording in progress.
Work in progress. Welcome, everybody. I'm calling the Finance and Administration meeting of April 18th, 2024. My name is Jim Spear, Mike Selmanson, Michael Cardini. We're the Finance Committee, along with Manager Matt West, Assistant Manager Alan Gazzardo. And let's take it away. Review of March minutes. Everybody get a chance to look at that Michael prepared for us. Any comments on the minutes?
Comments. Want me to move to accept them?
Please do.
Okay, I'd like to move to accept the minutes of the March, what's the date? Where is it?
March 21.
March 21, minutes of the Finance and Administration Committee.
I'll second that.
Cool.
All in favor of accepting the minutes? And none opposed. Great. All right. Treasurer's report. Mr. West.
Were there any questions about the budget versus actual report?
No? Didn't see any surprises in there.
Okay.
I was noticing some things are approaching or exceeding 100% of budgeted amount. IT service fees.
Yeah, so that one is going to be the oddball in that, if you remember, there's a $28,000 expense due to the scanning of paper records that was initiated, I think, 2 years ago, and it was finally done.
Okay.
And we got the bill, and so that's where it had been put historically, and so that's what's skewing that line item.
All right. Okay. You explained that before. No,
That's all right.
Okay.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Patrol officers holiday overtime.
Yeah, that was like,
At 104.2%.
yeah, I think that might have been a miscalculation from the budget, which is, it looks as though, hold on. It was close, but not perfect. Yeah, we had budgeted 75 and the actual was 78, so $300 over budget.
Anything else? Anyone want to comment on? Question? Nope.
Nope.
All right.
We are a quarter of the way through our fiscal year and we are at 50% of our revenues. Looks good, but we get most of our tax revenue
I was gonna say
right around here. So
So
that number will continue to
anything.
kind of trickle up.
I'd rather see like this time last year, what percentage.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like that would be really meaningful, I think.
Agreed.
I'm not saying you have to give it now. But
Let's see it. Come on.
Hold on.
All right.
You were clicking and I was like, is he like trying to get that right this second?
Actually, I do have it.
Oh, no, look at that.
I
See?
think. If it works.
Under ask and overperform.
There we go. Okay, this time last year for revenue, you're at 25%.
That's interesting. For which one?
March 31st, 2023, we were at 25%. And here we're at 50.
Interesting. That's really, there were no changes in.
And I don't know, I
Staffing. Depends on when stuff was being.
That's the revenue.
Right. So if we were behind on deposits or something with taxes and other, there's a lot of variables like with last year.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because that was around the transition period when it started.
Yeah.
Can you explain what does real estate taxes prior year mean?
Good question. So in the real estate tax world, there's current year, so you pay your taxes in the current year. Someone might come in and pay taxes that were for last year, but has not gone, a lien has not been placed on it yet. If you don't pay your taxes, your tax collector works with the borough solicitor to process liens. Those payments come in separately as the third category is real estate taxes liens. So if you pay this year for property tax last year, typically it happens in January, right? Near the time when the fiscal year clicks over. Someone comes in and pays their taxes early January, but it was for the previous year. It has to get booked for that revenue line item.
Okay, so a budgeted amount for real estate taxes previous year would be just probably just the amount that you figure wasn't paid for last year?
That's a good guess,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Assuming you're not gonna get 100% recovery.
That's when it will go into the lien.
Right. So,
So the two are related. From an accounting standpoint, from an audit standpoint, we have to separate them across those three buckets.
Gotcha. I see.
Oh, I know why I was so off, because remember how Regina cuts us that large check for real estate taxes? That hadn't been deposited last March.
Oh.
It was deposited in the second quarter.
Okay.
So that's why there's such a huge, it's close to $1 million for real estate tax, so,
Dang, okay.
okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, should we move on to scheduled bills?
Sounds good to me. Are there any questions about the schedule of bills? That I can answer.
I do not have any.
Nope, none for me.
No?
No.
Very good.
So I'll move to recommend approval of the scheduled bills for the general sewer, solid waste, capital highway, and green funds. Total of $306,933.13.
I'll second.
All in favor of that? And none against. Great. Okay. Discussion items. Now we will move to our ongoing discussion of rules of council, which is encompassing a number of topics. Last month, we talked a lot about, I think we focused mostly on council members' participation and how they participate remotely and the considerations due a council member. And I think this month, we would like to talk about public comment, both public comment in general and public comment online, and how we might spruce that up a little bit, or if we might want to recommend any changes. So as part of that, I think it's relevant that we've been looking into other neighboring boroughs, roughly our size, and what they do. There's a variety of things they have. Where do we want to start? Does anyone have a favorite topic?
Well, I think there's sort of two interrelated things, and Matt and I talked about this after the last we call the other kind of meeting. Workshop meeting. I kind of like the idea that Matt has put forward of changing when the public comments depending on what kind of meeting we have.
Yeah.
And I don't think we particularly address that, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I thought it worked well last time. So the idea is, public comment. It depends on whether it's a workshop or a business meeting, where we're going to have the public comment. So let's start with that before we get to how much public comment.
Yeah, that made sense to me, especially in terms of just like thinking about what the purpose of the comment section of the meeting is, and it changes depending on what the purpose of the meeting is, right?
Right, so workshop meetings tend not to have action items, so it kind of makes sense to have public comment at the end, so people can comment on whatever they want, you know, non-agenda items.
Yeah.
And if I could also share that, you know, if and when the rare opportunity arises where we need an action item in a work session, I'd like us to get away from, if we can, if at all possible, not to have action items at the work session. The spirit of the work session is informational. That should be a little more informal, a little more interactive with residents, participants. That is focusing on information of things where you can suss things out, ask questions, get into the details, and then in an ideal world, 2 weeks later, everything that you discussed at that meeting will show up on the next agenda as an action item. So the spirit of it is have all of the discussion, have residents, participants, give them an opportunity to listen, to digest, to absorb, and then give an opportunity at the end of the meeting, after they've heard everything, to contribute to that discussion. Business meeting is more formal. And, you know, it certainly it's to the chair's discretion of how, you know, if the chair would like to consider public comment during each action item, you can do that also. Which is, I was going to say, you know, for the business meeting, it becomes more formal at the beginning prior to this body taking action. So they have, you know, residents have an opportunity to voice their concern for anything that is before council before you take action. To get back to the work session meeting, if and when the rare occurrence where we entertain an action item at a work session meeting, I would encourage council president to open it up to public comment for that specific action item, specific for that action. Therefore, it continues to have applicability of having that public comment at the end of the meeting. So you get that opportunity, because I would recommend really not having, as much as we can help it, having any action items at the work session meeting. But sometimes
Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
you just have to.
There's a time. So I guess the idea is, so we have to think about if we're going to write this. If we do have an action item in a business meeting, at a workshop meeting, whether we're going to be more liberal in, if the idea is to share information, some back and forth with the public, you know, perhaps generally the default is not to limit it in time, in 3 minutes, right? If we're, you know, if the idea is gathering information from the public, and except, you know, the president can do it at his discretion. If there's 50 people in the room, we think everybody's not going to have the opportunity.
I would flip that. I think it's probably better to have clear, like, time allotments on the front end, and then if there's not a ton of people, council can invite someone to continue to dialogue. I think, and the reason why I say that is because I think it is, when you go the other way, people start to feel like they're being targeted. When you tell someone that they have, like, that they generally have an unlimited amount of time, and then you suddenly place a limit on them at the meeting, it's very different than if they come in expecting to have a limit and then they're trying to.
And I guess if you tell them they don't have a time limit, and they come in with a 7-minute speech, and all of a sudden you're telling them they only have 3,
Right.
that's a problem.
I think that's
Yeah,
good
I
that
think you're right.
the expectation should be
Yeah.
that there's a limited time.
Yeah.
So of these boroughs that I've asked about time limits, all of them have time limits. Some of them told me up front that, oh, you know, we're really loose with that, you know, and if we don't have a lot of people there, we do let them go past their limit. 3 minutes seems like a standard limit. There's one borough that has a 2-minute limit. Everywhere else I asked about has a 3-minute limit.
Yeah, one of the,
As does the school district.
The school district-
there, 3.
Yeah.
One of the things I've seen is that 3 is kind of the standard, and I've seen it done 2 ways in terms of like how you can deviate from that standard. One is obviously council or the chair can change that. But the other way that is, I think, and this might be impossible for us to manage, but like where there's kind of like a trigger, where all of a sudden if you have a ton of people, and usually that's not if you have people like signing up
Yeah, I
to
was
speak,
gonna say.
and then you tell it, and it's like, oh, actually the amount of time here is 3 hours, so it triggers down to
Right.
two minutes.
A lot of
person,
places
whatever it
do
is.
require you to sign up ahead of time if you want to make public comment, or, if you walk in at the meeting, you're supposed to sign in, and say, yes, I would like to be recognized for public comment.
And
Yeah.
I call people in that
Yeah.
order, so people
Yeah.
arrive early to be first on the list.
So there is kind of a pre-count exists, they know roughly.
The problem with that is you can't really do that if people are commenting online.
Mhm.
And I don't want to get to the online comment
You don't?
issue yet. Yeah, I want to sort of finish this thought.
Yeah.
The other thought I had in that regard is, and Fred is going to disagree with me on that, but it seems to me it shouldn't just be the president's prerogative to ask, like, if they want a follow-up question or information. Or maybe it's like council can turn to the chair and say, Mr. President, I'd like to ask a follow-up question just for clarification, or like, it either should go to the chair to give us the opportunity to ask a question if any of us want some more information, right? Or we should have the ability to say, I'd like to just ask a follow-up question of the member of the public. Like, one or the other. Maybe it goes to Fred.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a better way to do it, so that if I don't think anybody on this council would abuse that, but I can see like people putting shills in the audience, and you want him to have that ability to not do that, but.
Wait, so,
So let's say
I don't think I'm
something-
quite following.
So let's say somebody gives 3 minutes, right? They
Okay.
give the 3 minutes, and they see something that's not very clear.
Mhm.
And, Fred's like, I'm good, but I'm like, wait, I didn't understand something. Can you, Mr. John Q. Public, just clarify for me? You said blah, blah, blah.
Do we not have the ability to ask that kind of clarifying question now?
I'm not sure that it's clear in the rules, because it says there's a 3 minute which can be extended by extension. Like, you're not gonna count that against the person's 3 minutes, but I'm not sure the rules say, like, any council member can do follow-up questioning, whatever, that doesn't count against the person's time.
Well, I guess I guess that would just fall under any other thing, right? Like if we're having deliberations and we wanted to ask a clarifying question of someone who was in the room, we would have the ability to do that. I feel like it kind of falls under that, and it's the chair's duty that if that starts to get unruly, to bring all of that to order.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why maybe it goes through the chair.
Yeah, because I guess normally, like, the way I've seen it done is that in those instances, and they're few and far between, someone asks the clarifying question and you get the clarifying answer and you move on. If it ends up becoming a problem with people like
Yeah.
abusing that, then maybe.
I think a lot of this goes to like the style of meeting that the chair wants to run. A lot of this is up to at the discretion of the chair.
Mhm.
I'd hate to micromanage, but
And to be clear, I'm talking about it not in the business meeting.
yeah,
Maybe I'm just talking specifically, if we're talking about, if the workshop meeting is for information gathering, there should be more of an open ability for open dialogue in that meeting, if that's the purpose of it.
but not at an agenda meeting, not at a.
I
Business
think
meeting.
it's less of an issue at a business meeting. Like I think that's where you want to have control, and I guess it should ask the president.
So I did notice some boroughs, for every action item, they open it up to questions,
Yeah, each one.
both from council and from the public,
Right.
even before every vote. There's one meeting I attended in Bridgeport, where for every vote, they say, are there any questions from council? And, any questions from the public,
Mhm.
That's how North Wales Borough does it as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's a style.
it is style,
Yeah.
It's not as formal. The formal is, the traditional is you get one chance for public comment for the public, close it down, and then move through your agenda items.
Yeah.
You know, my feedback to you all
Yeah.
Yes.
is, how enforceable is this going to be? From my perspective, from watching you all, being here previously, this is a pretty folksy environment. It is not formal. And I appreciate that. I think you're approachable. I think it enables council members to read the room and feel empowered to ask some follow-up questions. And so my feedback to you, take it with a grain of salt, is that, you know, I appreciate this exercise, but is this body already following the rules that council has right now to the T? Because they're pretty strict if you read through them.
Well, right, that's why we want to change them, right? Because if you read them, it's not, what's in the rules and what we actually do are like
So I am a
here
fan
and
of-
here, and people see those rules and they're thinking, these guys don't care about what the public has to think. I think part of
Well,
what.
do they see the rules though? I hadn't seen the rules until. we
I mean,
started
I haven't seen the rules either, but somebody, you know, if they want,
Yeah.
the people who want to see the rules are the people who are going to claim that, you know, we don't engage and they're going to point to the rules. I think the rules, I always think it's a good idea that rules reflect practice.
Amen.
I mean, that's the employment lawyer in me, right? You
Yeah.
got the personnel, you know, you got the handbook, and then, you know, I'm in the deposition, and like, oh, that's in the handbook? I didn't know I was supposed to follow the handbook, and you're like, you're the director of HR. You know, right?
So one thing, Borough Conshohocken has, on their website, it has posted guidelines for public comment.
Yeah.
And it's extensive, you know, it says, you know, this is the limit, this is the kinds of
Yeah.
things that you can expect, you know, it might not be the best place to ask this kind of question, or
Yeah,
that kind of question,
yeah.
or council doesn't get back and forth on this and that. I think we should have that, maybe not in the rules,
Yep, yep.
but
yeah.
posted somewhere.
Yeah.
It just as a separate avenue.
Yeah.
I think we want to make sure the public has a way to get questions answered.
Mhm.
You know, it's not always, a public meeting is not always the best place for that to happen, you know,
Mhm.
just because of the limits on what you can, you know, you can say at a public
Mhm.
meeting, you know.
Mhm.
But the more avenues we have for exposure to the public, informally, or question and answer sessions, I think we should try to
So
find
how
those.
many people have, how many places have, you know, you're allowed to comment on each action item?
It's not in the chart, but there are at least two.
To comment on what I'm saying?
To comment
Comment
on
on each action item.
So I would just say that I've seen municipalities that have done it that way and then have switched, because oftentimes what ends up happening is instead of, right, the ideal is that we're allowing everyone from the public to come in and speak to us. But what I've seen happen when you have a chance to speak on every item individually is you often have a small number of people
Yeah.
who then speak on every item and then end up taking up, you know, half an hour, but it was just one individual, which I think is actually contrary to the spirit of,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, public engagement.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to have the default just be 3 minutes total for anything that's on the agenda for the meeting.
Your concern was really into work session those, if we're voting on stuff, right? Because public comment would fall at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe if we make an exception where if it's a work session and we are voting on something, then in that instance, you
Yeah.
open it up to public comment before you vote in that instance.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
You know?
that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay.
And the
Yeah.
purpose of public comment is to listen to the public.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not supposed to be an open dialogue. We're
Right.
supposed to hear what the public has to say.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's a clarification thing, you can clarify something in the meeting, but if it requires more thought and input, you might have to follow up with them after. And that's kind of discretionary for us. It kind of depends on like what kind of an answer they're looking for.
Yeah.
Because I do think that when folks discuss public comment, and this hasn't necessarily happened here, but just to generically, there's also a value in like meeting management because, you know, you could have like the maximum amount where everyone gets, you know, 10 minutes or whatever it is. And then if you're taking action items at midnight, then like that's also kind of, because you're gonna have people that can't stay and are gonna have to leave.
Yeah,
And so at a certain
something to me
point, you
about
like end up
midnight voting.
running, yeah, contrary to what you were actually trying to accomplish.
Yeah, they want to be there to see the result.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to over belabor this because I had two other thoughts, sort of closely related. One was, I guess one borough came back to us and said, oh yeah, we don't let people online comment, like if they can't show up, too bad. I didn't like that. I mean, to me I get it, but we've been allowing people to comment online. It's usually just a handful of people. It doesn't seem particularly burdensome.
So we only started doing that during the pandemic.
Right.
You know.
Well, we only had online during
Well, okay. That's true. But we hadn't been doing it, had not been doing it previously. I didn't find any other borough that takes online, you know, public comment, except Ambler, who is voting to do away with it, who's voting to discontinue it this, you know, this month or two.
Did they have issues? It hasn't, I mean, it seemed to have worked fine for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, the way we wrote the draft was, like, you have to recognize we may have technological issues, you know, like you may, if you're online, you take the risk that there might be a technological issue that doesn't allow you to show up. So if you really won't feel strongly about showing up or making comment, you should show up.
Yeah. So just the other side of that is that, you know, a lot of people have trouble when they call in and want to make a public comment, like they can't hear to the extent that they want to, or, you know, maybe they're not ready and, you know, it's hard to get their attention. And maybe just in general, their expectations are not being met by the service that we're offering. Maybe it's just too lofty an ideal. You know, much as I hate to just eliminate.
It seems so crazy in this era of Zoom where I attend court hearings by video, you know, that are binding and under oath and all that kind of stuff that we can't manage to.
I think that I feel like kind of the way we do it right now makes sense, which is if you're attending online, then you're running the risk that you might have some AV issues. And then if you can't get your microphone to work, then there's not an expectation that the entire meeting is going to stop. You know, you couldn't have gotten your mic to work. But for most of the folks, it seems like they tend to be able to like start talking like pretty soon, and it works for them. And
it also just seems, the thing that struck me is we have borough council members attending by Zoom, and it seems kind of weird to say, oh, members of the public, you can't comment on Zoom, but Joe, you know, can you know, vote on Zoom and make comments on Zoom.
Or the engineers.
Right. So it seems, it just struck me as, you know, I realize we're the outlier, but it's kind of struck me as like, well, everybody else gets to participate in Zoom. Isn't this just a way to try to kind of... And then my only third comment, just to keep things going, because I don't think we're going to resolve any of these, make decisions or recommendations. There isn't a way, I don't think, if somebody wants to send all 7 of us an email you know, to say, I want borough council members, I couldn't make the meeting, but here's my thoughts. Like, the school district actually has a specific email address called community comments. Anything that goes to community comments automatically gets distributed to the 7 school board members or the 9 school board members. We don't really have a channel for that in the same way. So, like, before I was on borough council, if I want to write to borough council, I have to like individually pull up each address off the webpage, like try and cut and paste it, not quite get it right, screw it up, type it in, you know, get it bounced back. Oh, look, I left off the I in Ira's name. And, you know.
Is this for people who want to make a comment but can't attend?
Well, it's basically if you just want to write to the school board as a whole with a concern, and the school board will always say, like, just to remind you, you know, it's a good way to say, you know, if you don't think you can make all your views known in 3 minutes, don't forget, you have the ability to write to community comments at lmsd.org and put your entire, 7 minutes worth of comments in, and it will go to all the members of the school board. And I just thought,
We could encourage people to just email you all directly, because all your emails are posted on our website.
right, but to
Just-
pull them out sort of individually, that's what I'm saying, it's a little bit of a pain.
Or I
So they're
guess-
either gonna email like Matt or you individually, or they're gonna pull 7 out. I'm just wondering if there's just a way to create that kind of emails where it automatically gets distributed to everybody. Maybe.
I'm not sure.
It
Yeah.
might even be simple enough to just say like, there's like a page on the website and there's a little dialogue box. You can type something in, they hit send, it goes to,
Yeah. There's gotta be a way.
There is
that-
a way to create a hyperlink in HTML that automatically pops up a whole bunch of addresses,
Yeah.
in your regular email.
Yeah,
Because, if I go to the website now and I click on Mike Solomonson, usually it goes to my mail and it.
I mean, I assume that this is like either in Google or whatever, where it's community comments, and then, one of its commands is automatic forwarding to the following 7 email
Mhm.
addresses or 8 email. I think it goes to the board secretary, actually, and she must have a way to automatically send it.
Is there currently someone who collects, I'm looking at you, because the only possible answer is you, like, when someone writes to the borough to complain about something or with an issue,
Oh,
does that
well,
get collected somewhere?
generally they email myself or Matt or the info account or the building inspector
yeah.
or Jeff or chief. It kind of just depends on what it is.
Yeah. How, I
But
don't want,
sometimes they'll email like Cindy individually or,
And we're not privy to if someone's emailing you guys behind the scenes
Right.
and they're not sharing it with us and you're not sharing it
Yeah.
with us, we don't know.
right,
Right,
that's
exactly.
true, that's true.
Unless I'm like searching your emails, which I'm not.
I just feel like there should be a way if people want to email us as a group to make it simpler for them. That's my
Yeah,
own.
so community comments has been around for a while with the school district.
Yeah.
And I know from people who have been on the school board, they get it in their packet. They
Right.
get, these were the letters to community comments, and it's part of the stuff they read through for the month.
Now, like some communities here, you see the one says they read public comment or they read letters aloud at council, right?
Yeah.
And that actually, so we did do that in North Wales. I'm not saying we need to do that, but what would happen is if someone was able to attend, they would send it to the council president directly and the manager, and then it would be read, like print the email out and then read it at the meeting and just say so-and-so emailed, this was their comment. I mean, depends on how
Yeah.
accommodating you want to be.
Yeah,
with
I
that
don't
sort of
think you
thing.
want to read the whole
Yeah,
letters.
I think the point of the letters, or one point of the letters, is that you can make comments that are greatly exceed a 3-minute readability, if you want to. And that would take up a lot of time at a meeting, to read
Yeah.
many, many minutes worth of letters.
Yeah.
Most of the communication that the office receives is more practical, that wouldn't rise to the council
Mhm.
level and say, hey, we have an issue that we take care of.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Public Works, police related. Very rarely do we ever get something that is submitted to me that is meant to be a letter. I think there's been one that I can remember having to do with the development uptown, and that was forwarded to everyone.
Well, I don't know what to do about that. Should we, you want to think about recommending that there be like a general comment line for writing?
Yeah, maybe there should be some guidelines for that to specifically say like, this is not for, filling your pothole. This is for if you want to address things that are, agenda items to be voted on by council, things of general applicability. Maybe we could create some guidelines for that so that,
well, I think you probably wouldn't even need guidelines. If we want the asset right, you would either have some sort of just email thing that would
yeah.
that's a common thing, or you would set up some sort of just like quick, I
Yeah, quick.
forget what they're called,
Yeah.
like page where someone can type their comment and send it along.
Yeah,
And then, I mean, like however they use it, and, you know, if we did that, we could just remind people, you can,
Yep.
can't make the meeting, you can send this to us, if you don't want to speak at the meeting, because not everyone wants to,
right, that's.
you know,
true, too.
speak on camera at a meeting, right? You can just
Yeah.
email us, and then you've resolved kind of the issue you've identified of like, you know, what if they don't know where to look for the emails or whatever, you just have a page, you say, you can
Yeah.
send it right to this thing.
Yeah. I just, you know, I like that, as you said, you know, some people, I mean, my wife would never come and speak at a public meeting in front of, you know, especially on a controversial issue. She might be willing to write an email.
Well, that's what I was saying about reading people's comments if they want to make public comment, but, you know, some people don't like speaking in public or on
Right.
video, like you said. So
Yeah.
it gives them
Yeah,
that kind of accommodation where it's like maybe they don't feel comfortable doing it, but they have good thoughts or they have something to contribute.
yeah,
So like, if it's a good thought, why not just like hear it out and maybe read it? I mean, I don't see the harm in that, but.
I guess the question is, do you have to read it out loud to the whole rest of the public? I don't think so. I mean, we want to read it, right? We want to hear that contribution. The problem with reading is, you know, the idea is you have more than 3 minutes to say, here's a place where you can say it.
Yeah, it's
Whereas
like,
now, if
yeah.
you're reading it, what are you gonna do?
You're reading
Like,
aloud.
You're reading it aloud, you get to the 3-minute mark, and then you're gonna be like, nope, we're not gonna read the rest.
What's the spirit of it? Are you looking at it being a function for interaction with action items as it relates to meeting management for things that are going to be voted on? Or are you looking at it as a general, I want to complain about something, or I want to contact council about something?
I think primarily action items. So,
Okay, I was hoping
you know,
you would
the
say
idea
that.
is, I've got more than 3 minutes to say about this action item. You've limited me to 3 minutes, and we're like, great, just as a reminder, sir, you know, we can hear your whole thing, send it to us. You know, here's, because that's what the school board does. You know, people get cut off, they get frustrated, and they always say at the beginning, just a reminder, everybody, you know, if you don't get to say everything you want to say, you can email us, you know, if you have them written out, just email them
The
to us and
challenge
we'll
with
get the whole
that
thing.
is if you are looking for comment on a specific action item at a meeting,
I know, then it's
and
too
you
late.
say, hey, just email us, you're taking action, and it's, that ship has sailed.
I know.
So I would think if you would want to use this, the idea I'm thinking about is if council is interested in moving forward with this process, add a new shared email, whatever the name, community comments at whatever,
Yeah.
on the agenda, and give that opportunity for people to email their comments ahead of the meeting.
Yes.
So you all have them ahead of
Yeah,
the meeting,
okay,
and then you
right.
say, and we did receive X amount of comments, which will be included in the meeting minutes.
Right.
So that's your documentation.
Yeah,
So you all
yeah.
have it ahead of the time.
That's a good, yeah,
before
that
you
makes
can
more
take
sense.
action.
So when we developed guidelines for public comment, that's another place we
Yeah.
could push such a comment line, you know, writing line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was kind of what I was envisioning, that type of thing would be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes sense.
The more guardrails you can put on it, the easier it will be to manage, and the more effective it will be for all of you.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, can't make here's the agenda, oh, can't make the meeting, send us an email, and we'll, you know, we'll
You
get
should
you
put
your
limits
comments.
on
Right,
emails must be received
Right.
by this time.
right, yeah.
You know, in the spirit of
Right, yeah.
getting information to you
Yeah.
all. You don't want to have it like the minute
Right.
before the meeting
Right,
starts.
right, by noon of the day or something,
Whatever.
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, in the same way that we put the Zoom information on the agenda, you just
Yeah.
download a link to it or whatever it is.
All right. Any other topic
So that
related
was
to
my
public comment?
three, that was my three.
Public comment, any other thoughts?
Just, I like the getting emails ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, as far as the rules of council go, let's try to corral whatever unanswered questions you have over the next month. We'll do a wrap up next month and try to get this in some form we can move it along. I I'm going to continue filling out cells in this chart and throwing those too, just for
I think it's good for
reference.
the rest of council to see.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, very good. Let's go on to capital improvement budget discussion.
All right. At 16 minutes, I will try to keep it as brief as possible. The idea behind it this evening was to start the conversation with the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Up to this point, it has primarily been in the Infrastructure Committee meeting and meeting with the chair, Councilmember Winston, earlier this week. He recommended that we can go simultaneously with Finance and Administration Committee. So I forwarded the draft version of the capital improvement plan earlier this week ahead of this meeting, as well as a one-sheeter that Councilmember Gaudini was the brains behind that helped us develop the key factors in determining the total priority number, the final priority number. I just wanted to say thank you again in this committee to Councilmember Gaudini for that. And the only thing that I communicated to you earlier this week was that I changed the original, one of the first drafts was 0, 3, and 5 were the factors. After getting some feedback from some other council members, they're like, oh, it needs to be even intervals. So either 0, 2.5, and 5, or 1, 3, 5. It's like, okay, I get that. So I just changed zeros to ones. So the lowest score you could get on any of the factors would be a 1. I think that one-sheeter is really self-explanatory, and it helps frame out the idea of what the capital improvement plan is going to be. Because really, it's as I continue to say, in the Infrastructure Committee meeting, the CIP is a living, breathing document. This is not a one and done. Yes, it is a snapshot in time, but the capital improvement plan is going to be the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, it segues directly into the general fund budget, the budget season. Because remember, the capital improvement plan is not a funding document. No, it's just a planning document. The funding document in municipalities is the budget. And so having a vetted, adopted capital plan ahead of your budget making season helps you make better informed decisions for the budget season. How this capital improvement plan was developed was we started and we created a master inventory list that was generated by all departments. It was a collaborative effort of thinking of all of your capital expenses, which is defined as a one-time expense of $5,000 and a useful life of more than 2 years. That is the parameter, a single item. This is the snapshot in time. This is, we pulled from as many resources as we could find. There was a KCBA architect's report, a facilities program that had shown up on previous capital improvement plans. Using the data from previous capital improvement plans, talking to Chief String, Jeff Eldon, administratively identifying all potential capital improvement projects. What you're going to see, if you haven't noticed already, it excludes anything with parks. Why? What do we have underway? Our master park plan. So realistically, the master park plan is going to make some significant recommendations on capital investments. That should come into play during next year's capital improvement plan revision. Wanted to hold off on that. It also does not have anything related to the bridge. While yes, the bridge is paid for out of our capital fund, capital C, capital F, I wanted to separate it outside of our capital improvement program because it's its own thing. It has its own financial account. It's got its own parameters. The other thing that this does not include is 201 Sabine. There are no capital improvement projects for 201 Sabine because that too is its own thing. And we could discuss about whether or not we want to include 201 Sabine capital investments in it. Given the unknown status of the future of 201 Sabine, I made the decision to not include that this go round. You'll also see line items that have an asterisk on it. those asterisks, as the footnote was included, those are capital improvement projects that will require engineered plans or drawings. Those will not happen within the same year that you want to have the capital outlay. I want to put that in the capital improvement plan to show, to illustrate to council that we all need to be planning for capital projects better than we have been. It will better set us up for potential grant funding, and it will help us manage the expectations of those capital investments.
See the library.
Yes, we knew that, we would have had the plans, we could have been able to budget for it, we could have gotten some grant, it's sequential. And so I've been messing around with the timing of it and trying to do like one major capital project a year is going to be about the best that we'll be able to do. Kicking it out, one of the things, if you looked at the timing, the Elmwood Ave pedestrian bridge, that is a known critical issue that we need to fix sooner. I put it in 2026 because we need to have fully engineered plans for it. And council should consider adopting a budget in 2025 that will pay for our engineer to develop those plans. Give yourself a year to develop the plans, which then go into the bidding process, potential grant funding that following year. And that's the cycle that I'd like council to get into the habit of adopting. Plan for it. You have to pay general fund money to develop your plans. Sometimes there are grants available for planning projects. We might be able to secure grant funding to develop those plans. But most capital funding grants expect that they are shovel ready. They're not going to wait for you. That's frustrating from my perspective when grant opportunities pop up for construction. Construction, it's usually the first or second requirement. Fully engineered plans are required. That's going to take time. So using those 5 factors as part of that one sheeter, we take that laundry list of the inventory. That inventory is the living, breathing document. That can change. You'll see is one of the columns, date added, because we've already seen we've added maybe a handful of them. Oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. After the infrastructure committee meeting scheduled for Monday, I'm going to be adding several more. Our engineer, he finally went through with a fine-tooth comb. He's like, oh, we need to add these stormwater improvements that are part of our MS4 plan, our PRP. Like, oh yeah, that's right. He said, you got a couple, but you missed some. I didn't want to add them ahead of tonight's meeting, infrastructure meeting. Post-infrastructure committee meeting, those will also be added. You take each item, assign a value inside of each of the 5 factors, and then it summarizes the total, and that becomes our final priority. Anybody looked at the calculated fields? I had some fun with that final calculated field. It's a nice calculation about yay long. We didn't have enough projects that were high priority for a 5-year span. So the second tab included in the Excel spreadsheet is the plan. You have the inventory, which is the laundry list of things, and then the plan. Take the highest priority projects and stretch them out over a 5-year term to see what you need to do over the next 5 years and how much the expected cost would be. That is your policy or your planning document that helps general fund budget time to say, hey, if we wanted to fully fund our capital fund, these are the prioritized projects. We need X amount of dollars to fully fund that in this instance, 2025. You remember, the 2024 budget did not include any transfer of capital into the capital fund. What's helping us this year, here during my report this evening, we have been receiving some grant funds, which has been populating our capital fund. So we're good for 2024. We're good in that we can currently pay for the capital projects that are underway, 80 Windsor Avenue being one of them. There is a public works vehicle that was approved last year, which is in the works, and we have the funds to pay for that also. And then it becomes a conversation with you all and I'm not expecting any decisions made tonight. It's tedious. I would encourage this committee to schedule time to come and meet with me and Alan and Chief and Jeff to talk about any of the things on this included in the inventory, as well as review our first take on what the prioritization values should be. One of the things that I've heard, it has to do with the EV vehicles. There were 3 EV vehicles that were included in this in the inventory, one for Public Works Manager, one for the Chief of Police, one for the Borough Manager. Those were added as a response to potential grant funds being made available through a grant-making agency who shall remain nameless at this point, as an idea that there were some funds being made available for EV charging stations. Unfortunately, we don't have any plans for additional EV charging stations yet. And so in talking to my source, they were, hey, how about EVs? Yeah, for fleet, yes. Fleet means multiple vehicles. And so listening to council and watching your commitment to EV charging, our Public Works Director, or Public Works Manager does not have a Public Works issued vehicle. That is not common. He uses his personal vehicle to attend to borough issues, usually, off the clock. The emergencies happen. Currently, our Chief of Police has an old Crown Victoria, which is a fossil fuel vehicle, V8, which is on its last legs. It might have a year or 2 left in it, but that's another candidate for replacement. And this idea of supporting electric vehicles throughout our fleet, yes. Borough Manager was added as a third option to increase our fleet if council was interested. Originally, I had it Borough Manager, I think it was medium, high, and then Chiefs and Public Works were medium, high, and high. And the 3 of us met to talk about it and said, hey, let's make it consistent. There's potential grant funding. Listening to council, we believe that EVs are, a high priority. Great, let's do it. I don't necessarily think that personally is a high priority. I think that we could make some adjustments to things to really fine-tune the final prioritization. So I say that to encourage you all. This is your opportunity to edit it, to provide feedback, to make this thing as perfect as we can make it, to get you all to buy into it so we can adopt it in time for our general fund budget discussion in the fall.
So you raised an interesting issue. Something that's a low priority, but no cost. Maybe we go for that even though it's not a high priority item, right? Because we're getting fully funded by a grant.
Yes.
So how do we make sure that's on our radar?
That's a good question. So, that's where your inventory list comes into play. Your inventory list is the backbone vehicle. It is on our inventory list. While maybe it's not identified as a high priority, we can make the case that yes, it is on our capital fund list. A grant might come up for something that might be on our list. We might have higher priorities, but I feel as though we will be in a position to go for that grant because it is included on our larger capital fund inventory.
Okay. So as the years go on and we revise the capital improvement budget for next year and the year after that, maybe some of those items that are left off might reappear.
That's the idea of doing this on an annual basis. So you've got things that are completed, right? If there are projects like 80 Windsor Avenue and the Public Works vehicle, they will be completed in 2024. They will still live on the inventory because they are still things, but their prioritization is 0 because it was just done.
So the column we're seeing, say for 2028, that might in fact change. Like
Yes.
in 2026, the column for 2028 might look different than it does now because there's
So good questions. Capital fund budgeting, the closer you are to your current year, the more accurate it is. The further you go, like 2028, you never know.
Yeah. Is there a way of estimating this is maybe 66% of what the eventual 2028 line, or is there?
I don't know if there's value in that.
Okay.
This is it is a planning document. Don't get lost in the weeds. Make it adaptable for when opportunities show up that you are in a position to attract grant funding, additional funding, and have it updated.
It's about 7. Yeah.
All right, so there's your crash course. I look
Okay.
forward to continuing this conversation in future meetings.
Okay. Sounds good.
We have a bunch of motions to be,
Oh yeah, I was just gonna repeat something that was already stated, which was, I think the goal of like the exercise was to create a first draft and provide us some kind of like benchmark, and then we can have conversations from there. Number one, so you can shift things around or, have those conversations. And then the other thing was so that we have like some point of reference and we actually have discussions about individual things. Like I had some questions about things on there, and it actually like provided a framework for me to kind of talk through it and also kind of hear like the rationale of things that I wouldn't have known one way or the other. So I think that for like, it was one of those things where it's like you never know how it's going to work in practice, but it was helpful to me in terms of like being able to have some of these conversations. Matt also covered a lot of the things that are helpful for sure.
Thank you. That's great.
To be continued.
Great start. Yes. There's nobody online that wants to comment, right?
No one is online.
Okay, good, because we don't have any time anyway. So, let's have a move for adjournment.
Yeah, second.
Second, and all in favor of adjourning, and we adjourn. Thank you very much.
Right on time.